This is Orlando Sentinel Now.
Hello, it's Wednesday, July 14th. I'm Rich Pope here with Trevor Frazier and Mike Lafferty. Got some good topics to touch on. We're going to talk about the protests happening in Cuba and how it's affecting things here in Florida. And also, Trevor Frazier is going to talk about this new paving here in Orlando that might be coming that could have some benefits. So we're going to find out more about that. And that's where we're going to start. So Trevor Frazier, so new pavement, a way to do roads here in Orlando that may actually cut down on pollution and have a cooling effect. What's happening?
So this is the story of a technology. It's basically a solution of titanium oxide that a pavement company, Pavement Technologies, has figured out how to put into pavement, whether it's concrete, whether it's asphalt, so on. That can supposedly, I mean, it's been proven in the lab, and it's now been sort of seen in the field, can capture pollutants, particularly nitrous oxide and what are called volatile organic compounds. It can capture these things, and then it also is reflective, which in theory and in the lab again has been shown to cut down on temperature. It can, reduce what's called the heat island effect, which is where you're around a bunch of pavement. All the pavement's gotten super hot, so everything gets hot around it, even hotter than the normal ambient temperature. So if this is if this all performs the way that we want it to, that's less air pollution and that's less heat. And Lord knows we all know how hot it can get walking around downtown, or if you're walking anywhere by any of these roads. So it'd be good.
Yeah, this is pretty cool, fascinating stuff, and it almost seems too good to be true. As far as the pollution side, what kind of effect does it have? I mean, have we seen numbers as far as what it can cut down?
So, I will say that the numbers are a little rough. So Orlando was one of two cities to test this in America. This is already a technology that's sort of in use in some places in Europe and in Japan, and seems to be doing well. The invention here is essentially how to inject this deeper into the concrete and make it last longer. Is what this company has really been working on. But we were one of the first two cities in the country to get a test strip of this. A section of Westmoreland in Orlando had this put into it in 2018, and they have been monitoring that. And while we don't know the temperature effects because it's too small an area to see how much effect it could have, it did capture pollution. They say up to about 31% of the nitrous oxide was captured there. There was another test over at Orlando International Airport. They worked with the same. They're working with the Texas A&M Transportation Institute, and at the airport, they worked with a company called Avcon to put some sections of this in. And they found that, yeah, the nitrous elimination was almost half. According to the company, if all things are firing on all cylinders, this could capture up to 60% of the nitrous oxide, which is a greenhouse gas. That would be, a positive effect on fighting climate change and so on. So that's the idea. Of course, the numbers are rough. We've only looked at very small sections and not for huge amounts of time. So they aren't positive. The basic line seems to be, we're pretty sure it's gonna be worth it. We're pretty sure it's going to be helpful.
Yeah, so any idea if they'll do further studies or even just larger stretches of roads when we could actually see a full road done with this technology?
Right. So there is a proposal right now on the books for a section of a 2.2 mile square section around the 408 I-4 interchange. As I talked to the director, Rick Howard, the director of public works here in Orlando, and he said, if there was ever going to be a spot that produced a lot of pollution and heat, that's it. That's the area. So that's the proposal right now, but it's a little more expensive than normal paving, and so the city is currently looking for a partner, some sort of economic partner, to go in on this with them to do this larger area and see the effect that it might have there. So That's on the table, but there isn't really a timeline yet. There isn't no budget yet. There's just sort of an idea that this is what they want to do. They know that they want to use it. They've already got a contract with Pavement Technologies. They already do our recharging of the asphalt and so on when those need to be redone. So it's just a matter of time. It's a matter of getting the money together. It's a matter of lining it all up.
Yeah, some fascinating stuff. You can read about that one right now on OrlandoSentinel.com. It sounds like, cooler and less pollutants. It's a good benefit there. All right, thanks. We're going to move forward here to Mike Lafferty. So, Mike, protesters in Cuba have gone to the street to demand their freedom, and some spillover happening here in Florida. And it's interesting how there's some irony as far as since there's these new anti-rioter bills happening in Florida, and the first time where we'll see how that will affect it.
Yeah, I suppose this was the first test of this anti-protest bill that the governor promoted and the legislature passed earlier this year. We've been opposed to this bill from the start. We didn't think it was necessary, and we also thought it was really just meant to send a signal that Florida doesn't welcome protesters, and protesting is a protected constitutional right. But in any event, it passed. And so what happened is, over the weekend, some pretty large scale and fairly unprecedented demonstrations started taking place all across Cuba. And people were marching in the streets. There was some sporadic violence. Some of the protesters were overturning police cars. It's like the kind of thing that was happening here. But the politicians who had backed this crackdown on protesting, they were oddly silent about that, and basically cheering on the demonstrators in this case, which is not something that they did last summer when we saw all the protests across the United States. And then concurrently, another thing happened, which is some people who were protesting in support of the Cuban protests here in Florida. They started spilling out onto highways and blocking traffic. And this was something the governor had taken particular umbrage over in signing the bill. He really resented the idea that last summer people had gone out onto highways and stopped traffic. So the question is, what are they going to do now? Are they going to start arresting people who do this if they happen to be doing it in the furtherance of an issue that the GOP legislature likes, which would be, protests in Cuba, or would they just reserve it for when there are protests they don't like, which is to say protests that are asking for racial justice in the United States?
In the editorial, it talked about the law being performative politics, and it's interesting because, right now, as you said, this right to protest is something that's sacred to a democracy, and seeing it happen in Cuba, but to have it here is like this double standard, and it's strange. It's like, as you mentioned, it's being tested. How does it work out?
Well, that's what we wanted to point out in the editorial, and we believe that just this instance at least demonstrates that this was really all about style over substance. They weren't really worried about stopping protests. They wanted to stop a certain kind of protests, the ones last summer that they thought, I guess they thought weren't justified. And we're not arguing that violence is justified, and there are already laws that address acts of violence during protests. They were on the books. But the bottom line is that if the people of Cuba were doing what they were doing there in Florida, at least, they would be subject to arrest under this new law. And we just found the whole episode of the last few days to be pretty breathtakingly hypocritical.
All right, Mike Lafferty, you can read more about that editorial right now on OrlandoSentinel.com, and of course coverage as things continue to unfold in Cuba. Appreciate that one. All right, all. Well, that's our topics for today. Appreciate you being with us. We're going to go ahead and push pause until tomorrow at noon. Do come back and see us. Until then, I'm Rich, Mike, and Trevor. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Watch Orlando Sentinel Now live every weekday at noon on our Facebook page and on OrlandoSentinel.com.